Is the crypto bull run over? Has the cycle finally topped? Today we'll break it down for you. It's going to be a good one. Let's just jump right into it. I do want to start the show with a clip that's going to get into this around Jim Cramer declaring that we have an alternate stock season coming. Take a look.
What would it take to make people start focusing on all the other stocks in what I call the real economy? Well, today we found out you need to see a big tech company screw up and then get slaughtered. I'm talking about just annihilated. I'm talking about Meta. Management committed to a level of capital spending that far outstripped what anyone saw coming, to an amount that, frankly, seemed imprudent, if not downright reckless. Meta stock did indeed get eviscerated. He's now in the year of living dangerously.
That was an entertaining clip by Cramer. It was entertaining.
Yeah, if you guys haven't checked out Evan, go over to his YouTube channel right there, Mr. Evan Aldo on YouTube, at Evan Aldo. Well, I'm afraid this bull run might be over already. One day ago, man, what are you doing here? You're manifesting here. Is this bad news for me?
So it's wild what I'm about to say, but I think that Ethereum and some alts could outperform Bitcoin and do well into 2026. But I do think the S&P 500 may outperform Bitcoin for at least the first half of 2026 for a general kind of situation. But I do think it's outperformed Bitcoin, going off of what Cramer said. I don't know if it's agreeing or disagreeing with him, whatever. But, going off of since July, the S&P 500 has outperformed Bitcoin. And I think that, if you look at 21, it outperformed from May of 21 later on, or even March of 21, the S&P 500 outperformed Bitcoin. So it could be like that into mid 2026. But the bright side of this is I do think if you go into the bear market, it won't be as bad as previous ones. I am
so not the 50% corrections that we've seen in the past. All right, well, we're going to break down Bitcoin in a second. I want to show you a couple of other things here. One is this may be another indicator for our market top. And that, of course, is that the bulls are actually outperforming the insiders here. So bulls outperforming insiders, this could flare into what many people would look at is the cycles that have been done. I just did a podcast with a cycle analyst that's one of the global data trackers out there. And I won't tell you what he said, but there are some big trends sliding in that Bitcoin may have already topped. Do you think that we are at that point right now based on what you're seeing coming out of the Fed?
The last time, let me show you some charts here that will explain a few things. So the last time that they cut rates, that they ended QT was right around here. You see this line end of July of 2019. And then you did see a fall down into pandemic lows. So that situation, if you were to repeat that, we would come down generally. Now, what's on the bright side of this, though, is I don't think it's going to be this catastrophic going down to 41K. This would be an absolute bottom, but I think, it's going to be not as bad, especially with institutional stuff and all that. I would think more of typically what we've been seeing lately, instead of 50% corrections, is 30%. So my main guess here is more of 30%. You can go lower, but I think Bitcoin may be kind of sideways bearish for some months into Q1 of 2026 to get all the bears excited. But at the same time, the last time here, when you ended QT, ETH bottomed out against Bitcoin shortly after, and you had kind of a face-melting rally against Bitcoin for ETH. And the thing to realize too is this whole area, while ETH outperformed Bitcoin, is all the way into pandemic drop. Everything went down while ETH still outperformed Bitcoin. So that's an important thing to realize. So you could still see some situation like this, even if we do enter bear market into 2026, ETH outperforming Bitcoin. So I think that's important to realize too. The last thing I'll show you real quick on others versus Bitcoin, others is everything outside the top 10 of market cap. You hit this major area against Bitcoin. This was where they ended QT in 2019, came down a little bit farther. So maybe we come down a little bit farther, maybe this area, right here. And then you hit this area, I don't know, a month, December 1st or something. That's when it ends, or end of year. And then you have, while everyone is in disbelief, while everyone is thrown in the towel on alts, then you have others start to outperform Bitcoin. in a bear market, mind you, similar to 2019, especially with a more lenient Fed share probably coming in,
Right.
and all these types of situations. So that's the big thing. I just want to show you real quick, S&P 500. This is the thing I was talking about. April 21, it bottomed out here. We have not made a new all-time high on Bitcoin. S&P 500 has outperformed Bitcoin since July. If it's like that, probably a lesser area. See, this was 400, a little less than 300. If it's like this, maybe 200 into middle of next year. So,
Okay.
I wouldn't compare Bitcoin too much against dollars at this point. You're at 3% inflation. That's probably never going back to 2% unless you
2%,
see,
yeah.
your next recession. That's years away probably. I would compare it more against the S&P 500, things of that nature right now.
If we do get another rate cut, because obviously Powell came out much more hawkish for December. Let me play this clip from Morgan Stanley, and then we'll kind of chat after. Take a look.
What the biggest risk, in my opinion, is Fed cuts aggressively, fiscal policy coming in with a lot of liquidity, and you build up this bubble faster. So if the Fed were to actually not cut rates this quickly, I think that would be good for the duration of the bull market.
You don't think cuts are necessary at this point?
No, I think too much liquidity is going to inflate the bubble more quickly.
That is the sense when you have money sloshing around. That does make people get a little worried. Meme stocks may be part of that?
Correct. And we know what happened in 2021. They went up too quickly, and then the Fed changed policy, and they went down a lot. So that's the biggest risk. But what's important, Becky, is that's consistent in the later stages of the bull market.
Later stages of a bull market, so many people still pointing that Bitcoin could have one more run. End of October, which is today as we're recording this, Bitcoin is currently tracking at 109 to 110. What do you think the close is today on Bitcoin?
I do think Bull-vember is possible. If we look at our chart here for, potentially what we could do, I don't know, the next few hours or something, it does look kind of bullish, at least in the short term. As long as we hold kind of 108, you're bouncing around, man. It's a little tricky here, but you really want to hold 108. And I think if you do so, then you could potentially get some, the 2-day doesn't look the best, but the daily, maybe a trigger wave forms here. You get a bullish November into the end of the month, maybe even back to 124. And if you can break above that old all-time high, then you're talking about new all-time highs by the end of November. But I have to be, objective here. Your higher time frames keep getting a little bit worse here. You got a red Heikin-Ashi candle on your 3-week. Your money flow is looking like it's about to start curving down. Your monthly money flow has been curving down. You got a bear div there. You got a wick above it, but you're still below that area. So I would say the thing here is we need to make a new all-time high in November. We really need to see strength in November to bring this forward. And if we lose 108 here, then I'm afraid you're not going to be sideways forever. If we lose 108, you're probably going to break down to a technical target around 95K right here. So, that's unfortunately what I think we'll see sometime early next year, Q1, 95, or potentially that full 30% correction down somewhere in the 80s.
Yeah. Well, I think the key here is where are we right now in this next few months? This is the most critical time, and like what the analyst was talking about, this could be, it's very indicative of these late cycle scenarios that are playing out. And if you do compare this to broader cyclical comparisons, including the M2, looking at global liquidity, the potential here is pretty interesting if the Fed cuts, and that's still the question mark, is if December comes in with a cut. Leading in right now, as of yesterday, I think I was looking at a Polymarket that said it was still leaning toward kind of a neutral position as being the winner. Let's jump over to Ethereum, because devs are now targeting the Fusaka upgrade. Now, you guys remember, Pectra was the last time that we saw a big run-up, and this kind of is correlating with your ETH chart of when ETH was running in the bear market. Now we're, of course, getting the Fusaka upgrade. This is the one that's been promised for quite some time. Other good things on ETH is you've got Coinbase earnings absolutely killing it right there, which is why Coinbase we saw performing quite well. 22% profit-wise in terms of volume on Ethereum, 9% on XRP, 24% on Bitcoin, and of course, You've got to look at this right here. ETH holdings were increased by Coinbase by 100 million. That's pretty significant. If you look at the chart right there, let me kind of bring that up. 100 million right there, only 300 million in Bitcoin. So are we seeing a rotation into Ethereum as Ethereum could be nearing a market run? Would this be the scenario where ETH would lead the altcoin season?
If you do have an altcoin season, I think it would be more similar to 2017 than to 2018. So theoretically, Bitcoin could have already peaked out while you see ETH make a new all-time high. Let's look at it in potentially next month. Now, the big thing we want to do, very important area, holding 37, I think is very, very crucial. Just such a huge area. I mean, if you were to, at this point, you've tested it like 4 times. This will be the fourth. This is the 4th time. I mean, if you lose that, then you're probably going down to, let's see, 3,100. But if you could hold this, rally forward, a lot of potential, especially with the end of QT. Maybe some people like what they were saying. Maybe some people want to FOMO into things that are a little bit riskier, buy things that are a little bit riskier. Potentially a Bull-vember, 5,000, new all-time high. If you can continue into the end of the year, there's potential for 5,800. I think at this point, I think the idea of 7,300 is pretty unlikely. I'd give it probably under a 20% chance now, but 5,800 is still doable. The thing that I'm a little bit afraid of that I'm talking about, you got a wave towards the bottom here on your 3-week. The same wave kind of marked the end right here. You see on your 3-week in December 21. If you find a chart with even more data, it was January of 2018 that marked kind of the top there as well. So if this confirms, 16 days to confirm, so assuming we don't, show some strength within 16 days, then I do think it is more bearish. Short term, you got some, trigger wave right here. The last one, it's kind of a scalper's, day trader's market, just long every time you hit this area. It's, some good odds here. I think this may work out. Something like this could be possible into the next week. 4,200 is doable if we play out like that. So there's an argument to be made, definitely an argument to be made for a bullish November here.
Bullish November possibly lining up. This would be kind of outside the traditional Bitcoin cycle, 4-year cycle, but it does, kind of stretch out a little bit, even though it is still Q4, which is typically where those tops come in. Let me go to another clip here. This is Brian Armstrong talking about the earnings that they just had. And he kind of pulled a little funny thing on Polymarket. Take a look.
I was a little distracted because I was tracking the prediction market about what Coinbase will say on their next earnings call. And I just want to, add here the words Bitcoin, Ethereum, blockchain, staking, and Web3 to make sure we get those in before the end of the call.
That is, I guarantee you, he told his friends, and this is complete, it's legal gray area. Doing it.
Here we
Tell
go.
my friends, bet on this on Polymarket, and I'll say this stuff. But then again, if you're doing that, then maybe you wouldn't admit to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, there you go, man. This is the problem with prediction markets: is you get somebody that has that kind of power, for something like that, and now you're getting into the whole. Now you're getting into the whole, it's legal gray area, and you get into the whole situation with what we've seen in the sports arena, where it's the the over-unders, which is what's happening in basketball. So
you saw the Super Bowl, the guy bet that there was someone who would run on the field during the Super Bowl and did it himself.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Here we go, guys. Speaking of Polymarket, you got to look at Polymarket and Polygon. Of course, Polymarket continues to see movement right here, almost all-time high, back to the point of where we had elections, which is really the last time that we saw the explosion on bets coming in. So when you look at Polygon, which again should be moving with all of this activity, you would think, does the token show any life on the charts, Evan?
So let's take a look at Polygon. It's definitely been a depressor in recent, for a long time now, all this year. And to be honest with you, I mean, we need to hold where we are right now. You got to hold 18 cents. To be completely frank, it doesn't look the best. I mean, I don't like the 2-day here. I do think it may drop down farther. However, if you can hold where we are right now, you may be seeing some strength. I mean, I think at this point, the main chart you probably want to look at is Polygon versus Bitcoin here. And it's hitting a big point. So if you can kind of hold where we are right now, I mean, I personally am a little afraid. I do have still have a small position in this. Was a medium-sized position, now a small position because of how bad it's done. But, you know, I want to say it should do well, but it's the charts currently aren't the best. I don't know if I would buy right now.
All right, well, there you go, guys. A Polygon, not a buy. Let's get into Solana. Before I do that, I want to play a clip for you because this was a pretty big deal. Take a look.
Is that mind-blowing?
Yeah, it's very mind-blowing. A staking protocol is now listed on Wall Street. It's crazy.
And they're eating it up, and the numbers looking good.
Solana launched in 2020, 2 days before everything crashed.
Before Black Thursday.
Yeah.
So great time to launch.
And now you got an ETF now. Look at you now.
So we've come to a point where Solana does more transactions than every major layer one combined, sometimes more revenue than all of them combined, which is, I think, a pretty astounding metric.
I was talking to a friend just at the NVIDIA conference. NVIDIA is kind of like a darling right now, $5 trillion market cap, but you know they were misunderstood for 20 years. So I think you guys are the NVIDIA of crypto infrastructure because you're engineering, same kind of discipline, and you're enabling, accelerating change.
That's kind of weird. Misunderstood NVIDIA. I think they just hadn't found their groove yet. They were a gaming company, so they were understood. They just figured out this was the better route for GPUs, which is kind of what Solana has done, the better route for revenue, which obviously staking protocol going on to the New York Stock Exchange, to Toli's point, kind of bizarre, right? So where is Solana right now? Because it's well under $200, which was not the pick for the end of October. What is it looking like for the end of November?
Let's take a look here at Solana. And, I think the big point is you want to hold 187. I mean, we're at 184 right now. You want to break back above that. I don't see any reason to really say that you can't do that you won't do that. I mean, your 6 hour looks pretty good. I mean, it's a weird kind of market. I mean, you're making higher lows, which is good. You keep in the same place. So theoretically, you should be able to jump higher. And if you do see Bull-vember, then I don't see any reason to believe you can't jump up to like 240 or even 260 if things get really, really exciting. But, we got to be objective as well. These high time frames, I mean, this 3 week looks pretty atrocious right here, similar to kind of how it looked on, Ethereum. And I mean, if you compare this, I want to be more optimistic on Solana, but if you compare this to a lot of alts in, 2021, they made like slightly higher highs than their 2018 highs. And then, that was it for that cycle, unfortunately. But I do think Solana is still going to be here, next cycle. But yeah, I mean, short term doesn't look the best right now. I'm trying to find a more optimistic path to tell you. But, man, I think we just got to really hold this area. I think the next week will really tell you the direction of this market. But
man, that's crazy.
And yeah, I just wanted to show you Solana, Bitcoin real quick. And, you still generally have outperformed, Bitcoin for the last few years here. And then, so if you can make the low here, I do think there is some hope for Solana versus Bitcoin as well. But I want to just, this trigger wave, you just kind of hold where you are right now for Solana, I would say. You got to really hold where you are right now.
That's the first time I've seen a bearish, because this is a kind of a weird episode, Evan. I mean, you're saying, Bull-vember, but what you're showing me is negative on ETH, negative on Solana. All of these are kind of pointing in the wrong direction, possibly not a top coming in on Bitcoin, and you've got money pouring into the S&P if we don't get a rate cut.
Well, the rate cut, I don't think that really, to be honest, I don't think the rate cut's really going to mean anything at this point. I mean, you at the end of QT, we know eventually
but if they don't, meaning that we don't get one, I'm just saying in December, not getting a rate cut.
I would think that's, I don't know if I would agree with that narrative that not getting a rate cut would be bullish. I would think not getting a rate cut would be, so what happened when we didn't get a rate cut in January of this year? That was the end of everything for a while. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's my fear, but
to that point, and I think the analyst was hitting on that point is that this would mark the end of the bull run if we did get a rate cut. What they were saying is trying to hold rates because there's too much money sloshing around. I don't understand how that would play into it. Let's jump over to another ETF that looks like it's going to go live, and that is the XRP ETF. Now, this is going to get weird because you got Canary Capital targeting November 13th. If this rolls out here in what is going to be 2 weeks, If you look at the chart, what do you like about XRP for November?
This looks actually a little bit better in most things, I'll say, because you're making higher lows, you're getting a good jump. I do like how this looks, and I do think you might be able to repeat this situation. And this would be in the beginning of November, making your way up to potentially $3. So I do think there's potential here. I want to see how more of this stuff plays out. I mean, your 3-day is a little bit wobbly right here. I want to see if we can get more of a play upward. I think if we want, this looks good here. The XRP looks a lot better than most things right now. So I think this could be one of those that jumps up to 288 and then potentially 330. And I mean, most likely the other coins that I'm a little bit more cautious on would jump up to some people's surprise if that does happen. But, to make a new all-time high by the end of November, I think that may be kind of hard. I think we would need to extend out farther into December or even January if you want to make a new all-time high here.
Interesting. So, okay, so possibly that could be one of the altcoins if you kind of consider it that way going into this. Other ones we have to look at is Avalanche. RWAs have exploded. The touch of God is in there, and that is BlackRock, Institutional Digital Liquidity Fund, came in and immediately hit right there on Avalanche. So, and if you look at this takes Avalanche into the number 2 position right now, at least on overall token supply, circulating, holding up, and interesting. What does that do for AVAX in terms of the chart? Because it has been struggling to maintain that $20 mark.
Avalanche, I mean, it's making higher lows. That's what I like right here. I mean, this could be one of those places a lot of people are scared, including myself, to be honest. I mean, trigger wave right here forming on your 4-day or 3-day. If you can have these play out, they're rare, pretty rare bullish signs. Like you could get easily a jump back up to potentially a double, $38 into end of year, early January. If you do, repeat what you saw, let me just show you others versus Bitcoin quickly. This cycle looks more like 2017 into 2018. For others, you had your drop here in October, same drop right here. So if it does play out like this, you may see a big jump into early next year if you can, have that play out and potentially, I wouldn't rule out an altcoin season, potentially seeing some type of altcoin season. I mean, I'll just tell you, I know I sound like a little bit not sure, what's going to happen here. I'm 66 or 70% essentially still in everything that I have, all the alts, everything. I have sold 30% so far, and that's kind of my technique. And I plan on being out, not completely, but out, mostly by early January. So I think that's kind of the best hedge. I think at this point you've wanted to have taken at least some profits, not financial advice, obviously, but some profits, but still have some exposure in case we do continue forward. Because in the cycles, this Q4 of the post-halving year is always generally the biggest profit-taking area.
Yeah, well, you've said that pretty much all year. As late cycle would be end of year. If it does extend, into early next, I think that's a question mark on what token and for what narrative reason that we're seeing. So far, things have been playing out as we anticipated, with the exception of all the balls being in the air. We talked about this yesterday with, tariffs, balls are in the air. Rates, now balls are in the air again. And of course, we're dealing with the same thing on Clarity, which if Clarity goes through, that could be a possible run for altcoins if we get the Clarity out. That would be an interesting one going forward. Other things to take a look at right here, if you look at just DEX volume right here on Uniswap, kind of an explosion too, because Uniswap continues to see pretty crazy DEX volume. What about Uniswap? Would this be a good trade right now?
Potentially. Let's take a look at Uniswap. It's not something too many people have talked about lately, which could be really good. So you're hitting this major area on, right around $5. Same place. You're generally making, higher lows here. If all goes well, this could do what it did from April to all the way to August. Big jump up into potentially early next year, back up to $13. I guess if you do see altcoin season, I mean, it's not going to go sideways forever. If it does break upward, you could be seeing a run towards new all-time highs at 3 or 4x if you do see somewhat of an altcoin season. You could argue too, if we do see another rate cut, monetary policy would support more of an alt season. So it's risky, but I do think, there's potential to, jump to $12 if all goes well here. If we do look at the macro though, trigger wave to the downside, it's a little dicey on the macro, but I could see it turning around. I definitely could see this turning around.
Yeah. What would be your bullish indicator for November? If you were putting it on the sentiment chart, would you still say this is bullish for November?
Just going up any amount in the next week to 2 weeks is bullish. We just need to go up. We just need to show green in the next week, I think.
Yeah.
Hold 108K for Bitcoin, hold 3,700 for ETH.
Yeah, fear and greed dropping back down to 31 after that nip that we had, which was pretty good last week at 42, which looked like the market might have come out. Obviously, that has changed. This gets down into the no-fly zone, though, which was all the way back in April. That was one of the problem areas that we had with both April and March, dipping into fear and greed. Yeah, that was Liberation Day. Yep, there you go. Which gave us an indicator around 15, which was not good, guys. So, what a market we are living in. This is a different crypto market than we have seen in the past cycles, so you guys do not want to miss a show at all, because you could miss some big activity. We're going to have Evan back in studio soon, or back in the show soon. If you guys, as I said, if you're not following Evan out there, check him over on his channel, Evan Aldo. Evan, thanks for coming in today. We appreciate it.
Always an honor, Paul. Great talking to you.
You bet. All right, you guys, make sure and do one thing, and that is get in on the Diamond Circle. It's our own private group, and it's very easy to do, and it's free. I give my indicators out there each week. I also drop in ideas of where I see this market going, and also bigger narratives, too, that could help you on, kind of the forward thinking of how your own, life is building around assets and all that. Not financial advice, but at least it gets you in the right research zone. Follow me on X, @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on The Paul Barron Show.